Hello and welcome to Practicing Practical Principles by Angela Haynes. The learning objectives for this lesson are: before the end of this presentation, the learner will design their own classroom using the 7 principles of a community of inquiry, and they will construct a classroom using the aspects of the community of inquiry. So before we get started, I want you to please use your microphone at the bottom of the voice thread to answer this question. Have you ever been in a class or a meeting where you felt like you could not share what you were feeling for fear of being looked down upon or judged? So I want you to know that the first thing that every classroom needs to be successful is open communication and trust. According to D. Randy Garrison's book, Thinking Collaboratively, this first principle is important to provide a thriving class setting. One activity that's suggested to allow for open communication is having each student in the class give a short overview of their life and what brought them to the class. This helps establish that each person has a history and a story to tell. And hopefully, when their story is shared, they can feel some unity with others who may have common backgrounds and build respect with those who may be different. It also makes everyone feel valued by others, knowing their names and being addressed by those names. The second important principle that D. Randy Garrison wants you to know is having a plan for critical reflection and discourse. Giving a student the opportunity to reflect on what they have learned is a very vital part of success in a classroom setting. One way to do this is to allow students time at the end of the class to journal their thoughts and feelings about what they've just heard and learned. Affording students this luxury will help them to recall what they have learned later because they were able to think it through and express their thoughts and feelings. So now I want you to stop for another moment, and I want you to use your text comment at the bottom of VoiceThread to do a little reflecting of your own. So I want you to please reflect on the 2 principles of the community of inquiry that we've already discussed. The first one being plan for the creation of open communication and trust, and the second one being a plan for critical reflection and discourse, and type at least one thing you have learned thus far. The third principle that every classroom needs to be successful is to establish community and cohesion. One way to do this, according to Garrison, is to break the class up into groups to allow for collaboration about a certain topic. Then you assign one person in the group to be the facilitator for this topic to allow discussion, but to keep students on track and remind them of their purpose. Their purpose is learning. Facilitators can then be rotated once the topics have changed. This allows cohesion first with those in their small group, and then eventually, hopefully, the whole class. The fourth principle needed for success in the classroom is to establish inquiry dynamics. One activity that Garrison mentions in his book is challenging students to defend a topic in the opposite way that they believe about that topic. By having them defend the opposite side, they learn another perspective and can constructively break down the question of right and wrong. This inquiry should challenge students while making sure the intended learning is still taking place. Making sure that students know that it's okay to ask questions is important, and hopefully by building this community in the classroom, a teacher can not only ask questions to the students, but students can ask questions to the teachers and also to one another. So now it's time for you to ask any questions. So please use your microphone at the bottom of VoiceThread and take this time to ask any questions that you may have about the first 4 principles of the community of inquiry that we have already discussed. The 5th principle needed for success in a classroom is to sustain respect and responsibility. This is helping students to know that it's okay to disagree with one another's perspectives, but teaching them how to do that with respect for each other. Some discussions may get heated, but the teacher can then step in and remind the students how to responsibly act when that occurs. The sixth principle that every classroom needs to be successful is to sustain inquiry that moves to resolution. One way to practice this is to give the students an issue and have them come up with their own way to resolve that issue. When the instructor gives the students a problem to solve, the instructor can then keep the students focused on the correct task, shift directions if need be, and help the students to discuss the resolutions that they are going through to find the right one. The last and seventh principle that Garrison says is important in every classroom is to ensure that assessment is congruent with intended processes and outcomes. The best way to ensure that this happens is with feedback. Constructive feedback to a student from a teacher is the best way for a student to know if they completely understand the concepts that they need to know. Teachers can assess their students in multiple ways, feedback being one and rubrics being another option. It's imperative that students know by these assessments what they comprehend and what still needs work. So how do we use this in our own lives? So how do we use this information in our own lives? These 7 principles that Garrison talks about in his book are valuable principles for the classroom, but they're also things that we can use in our own jobs and in our everyday lives. It's always good to work in an environment where you feel like you can advocate for yourself with no repercussions. It's also nice to know that you can work with a variety of different people that have different beliefs, but still do well at your job. These principles teach us how to get along with others and how to respectfully state that they may disagree with us, but we can still work collaboratively toward a common goal. So how do you use this? So I want you to stop for 1 minute, and I want you to use your text tool to give me at least one example of how you can use these principles in your own job or in your own life. So we're going to end here, but I want you to use your camera at the bottom of this voice thread and take this time to give me any feedback that you may have, because as we discussed, feedback is important. So please use your camera icon in the voice thread to give me feedback about this presentation. Thank you for your time and have a great day.